Let me summarize what we have discussed so far. Okay, there are importantly two topics that we thought: how to create objects, how to connect objects using IOC containers. Okay, so there are two ways to create objects and to connect. Using XML file, we learned how to create objects to our controllers or business DAO classes. We have to create poser, we have to create XML, and we have to configure all our posers into XML, and we can load it into Bean Factory or application context. Bean Factory is the lazy one which will create objects at first time user request, but it will ensure only one object it will create, whereas application context will create objects during loading time of your XML itself. In real time, we use application context based container only, which is a web application context. Coming to annotations, instead of using XML file, important annotations, stereotypes we have. They categorized, they categorized stereotype in the sense itself a category, right? So they categorized annotations into multiple stereotypes. For controller type, they given two types of annotations. For business classes, one service annotation. For repository annotations. For any miscellaneous classes component, and importantly for configurations at the rate configuration class. So when I configure my classes with these annotations and when I apply component scan, I need not to I need not to directly configure them. Just by using component scan, by giving package name of these classes, automatically I can create objects. But the problem is when I go with automatic object creation, I will not have any control to do the dependency injection. The main need of dependency injection is when I submit data from front end, my controller will read. From here, if I want to forward data to business classes, from business to DAO, if I want to forward. If these classes objects are created by IOC, I cannot connect them. So to connect them, I need some automatic dependency injection support also. That's where we use auto-wired annotation. Auto-wired annotation. In last session, we understand dependency injection we can perform from XML file manually using setter methods or using constructors. We have taken example of multiple dependency types, integer, strings, arrays, collections, right? And we can inject them using property tag or constructor tag from XML file. Have we done this example? Dependency injection of various data types. Let's see. Dependency injection we perform. So if you see, there are a lot of dependencies I have in my class, and to inject these dependencies either you should have setter method or constructor, a parameterized constructor. Here we tried with the setter dependency injection. For each variable there is a setter method. If you observe here, a lot of data types I have taken: name, phone, long type. array types, collection types, and we injected that data from XML file. This is XML approach. This is XML approach. We injected by calling setter method, name, value given, phone passed, array of strings using list tag we passed, array of cricketers using array in the sense list of cricketers, and a set of countries and states and capital values. So all these data types we passed. But importantly, when we implement a use case, not simple strings or arrays we pass. We may have dependency of another class. Controller may need business, business may need dev. So each class need to inject it into another class. Dev into business, business into controller. So these classes are predefined, not predefined classes, user defined classes. As a user, you may need to pass them. Consider student classes like a controller. Just an example. I want to inject a user defined object here, private address. I want to inject this address. I don't have address class. Let me create address class. So now this address class, I wanted to just a minute. So also close to method. Now this address class is dependency in my student class. How to pass them? The remaining all I entered from my XML file. Simple string, simple long value, arrays, collections. Now address is a separate bean. One more type of bean. Bean ID, something a class name, beans dot address. And address also having few dependencies. We can pass them. State, country. We can pass values. Street 5. Now this address parameter, how I can inject here? I have one more property, address. This is a secondary type dependency. So this A you can pass here using reference attribute. When you give this A, automatically this will be passed as a reference keyword and it will be injected. So your address object now can be injected into student class. Let me recreate toString method. And you can observe when I run this, address object also will be printed through student object because student object is already having address object. which is injected. Invalid property country. Okay, spelling mistake. Hmm. Okay, it is saying no setter method. Actually, we did not generate any setter for address. So for new variable setter not created. Yeah. So if you observe here, student name, number, fruits, cricketers, states, countries and capitals. Okay, states and capitals, countries and address finally. Student is now getting address also, which is injected. Secondary type. This is very important. The remaining as a developer you worry less because a class hardly may have simple strings or numbers very rarely as a dependencies. Apart from DO class or configuration class, your controller's business class will never have such simple strings or collection dependencies. Okay, most of the times your controllers will have business class dependencies only, like student. If controller is student, this is like address. Okay, always controllers will have business dependencies and business will have DO dependencies. If you again consider this as a student and this as address. Okay, so most of the times one class will have another class dependency. Controller needs dependency of business, business may need dependency of DOs. So most importantly, secondary type dependency injection is important here. Secondary type dependency injection is important here. So how we injected, we created that secondary type object separately and we passed it as a reference. So my dependency injection part is done. If it is a XML file approach, things are looking fine, easy. As I created my student bean and address bean created here, student bean created here, so that I can able to pass this address to the student. But while using stereotypes, I'm not configuring any bean class. If you see stereotypes example, here I have lot of classes, but in XML file, no class created. Where is my address or where is my student to inject? I don't have. Then how I can do that dependency injection? For such scenarios only, main importantly, as I said, right? Secondary type objects are very important to inject. When I have business class dependency and when I don't have control through the XML file, just to create your business class dependency reference with the auto wired. The annotation that you need to use @auto_wired. And when your business class requires DO class dependency, you have to put @auto_wired. So it will perform automatic dependency injection. It will understand, okay, in controller class, if you mentioned on top of business class @auto_wired, your IOC container will do what? It will check whether developer provided any business class with any stereotype inside any package. It will go and check, verify that class and automatically it will inject. Same way it will verify business class. Under business class, if you mention @auto_wired on a DAO, it will check for that DAO whether the DAO is available or not. Then immediately it will inject if it finds. So when you mention auto-wired, container will take responsibility of dependency injection. Why we need auto-wired? Why we need? Because here while using stereotypes. While using stereotype annotations, I'm not going to create any object directly. As a developer, my focus is just I'm writing my controller with @controller annotation. I need not to go and do any changes in XML. So if I need any validations, I'll write my utility class and I can put component. For my business class, I can use @service. For my DAO class, I can use @repository. And for my configurations, I can use @configuration. All these classes are automatically scanned and created by container. So if I want to do dependency injection also, I don't have controller. As a developer don't have any control here to inject or to perform dependency injection. To perform dependency injection, I don't have any control over this. So I can perform, no, I can't perform this dependency injection. I can't perform this dependency injection. So I should ask a container to do the dependency injection. I should ask a container to do the dependency injection. How I can ask? So here address class dependency I have XML file support earlier. But if you don't have XML file support and this address is stereotyped with any annotations, right? If it was stereotyped with any annotations like @service. So this address class, if it is stereotyped with any annotation, then you can ensure that, or we are sure that this object is going to create by IOC. In such scenario, you can put @auto_wired here. Auto-wired object compulsory should be available in IOC container. So my object is available because I used a stereotype. So while using stereotypes, you can use auto-wired annotation. Now let me inject here in the stereotype example, right? Inside controller, I want to inject business service class. How I can perform that? You can create your service class, registration service reference here and mention @auto_wired. Bus. It will be injected on field level only. Just you need to put no setter required, no constructor required. If I have any methods, I can call them. Let me put a method, public void service method. So I can able to call the service class method from my controller. Public void something controller method. Don't worry, when we see end-to-end use case, right, you will easily understand. So from controller method, I want to call service method registration service dot service method. From my service class, I want to call, if you want to call validations, maybe from controller or service, I can auto-wire that. This class contains any method, I can call it public void validate method. From my service class, I can call validation. If everything good, I may call DAO here to save my data. So DAO will have usually CRUD operation method. DAO.CRUD save. You can do all these calls. Now if you see, my controller is connected with service as per MVC architecture. Controllers connect with business. My business class connected with validations and DAOs, means utility class and DAOs. And if DAO wants to connect with the configuration class, here configuration dbconfig, you can auto-wire here at the rate auto-wire. In case if you have any configuration methods, you can call public void config methods. Usually config methods will have at the rate bean, and here we will return something which is important to us in our class to auto-wire. Usually I'm just creating a date, okay, return new date. This object also container will create. I'll explain in detail about it. So during execution of this configuration class, this method automatically will be executed. This is not for user, this is for container only again. This method will be executed, and whichever object you are returning, that object will register into IOC, unlike all other classes. So now this date object also you can auto-wire. Means a custom object I have, predefined object I want to create in container, I can create it. So if you need the date object also here, you can get that on which date it is executed, I want to know. So date also I can auto-wire. Who created this date? Auto-wire I can able to apply only container objects. Yes, date also will be created by the container as you mentioned at the rate bean. This one also, whichever object it is returning from this method, so this one also it will consider it as a bean. And this method who will execute? It executes automatically. Container executes. During scanning of this package, this class object will be created, and if it find any at the rate bean methods, immediately this method also it will execute. So whichever object you return, that object it will register into IOC. So you can auto wire that anywhere which you want. So I just want to print date, and in configuration if you have any other methods also you can call here configure method plus date which is came from configuration class. The date also I can print and see. So now if you see the flow, controller class, let's say from front end you call this method, from front end you called this method will call immediately next layer business class method, this method. From here we are calling two methods, validations method, it will go and execute and it will come back. This DAO class CRUD method also it will execute. And here I am calling configuration class methods. Generally we will not call any methods from the configuration, just this class we leave it for configurations only. Means date object we created there. That's it. That is a configuration. But for your understanding purpose, I just auto-wired that here, and I'm calling configure methods also. So one class to another class methods I can able to call. I connected them. So what is the importance of this auto-wired? I should able to connect them. The main important two jobs that container need to perform is connect objects, create objects. Using stereotype annotations, it was created object. That is perfectly fine. But now to connect them, controller want to connect with service, service wants to connect with validation and DAO, DAO want to connect with config. Yes, you can connect them, whichever you want. When you mentioned auto wired with that particular class reference, that will be connected with you. Controller connected with service because you mentioned auto wired. By simply mentioning auto wired only, it is not going to inject here. This class also should have compulsory stereotype. Okay, stereotype, whichever object is auto wired here, that class must should have stereotype, or at least it should be at the rate bean method return value. Okay, importantly, whichever is auto wired, that auto wired is compulsory, should be created by IOC container. When IOC container will create, when you mention stereotype, or else it is from at the rate bean method, then only the dependency injection can be performed. Now if I try to call my controller, how I can call? Earlier I used to have ID so that I can able to call. Now I don't have any ID to give here for controller. So as you don't have controller ID, give controller class name directly with dot class. It will understand. You are asking container, give me controller object. Okay, it will give you. What next? You can call controller method. See, all your objects it is created using stereotype. Config object, DAO, service, validation, controller. All objects are created. Good. Not only that, I can able to call controller method. Internally controller method called service method called validate method and CRUD method. Inside CRUD method we are showing date which is created under configuration class. All they connected together. Otherwise, this execution may not possible, right? It is not possible. When I call controller method, it may not able to call service method. Service may not call validate and CRUD method. CRUD may not able to print date. But how it is happening? It is happening because they are connected together. How they connected? Using at the rate auto wired. So that's why auto wired is very important along with the stereotypes. Along with stereotypes, auto wired is very important. So you see, right, using auto wired how we connected them. In case of setter method or constructor, again if I go back to XML approach, I have a student class with so many variables and secondary type also here, custom object. So to inject that custom object, I have created a separate setter method, and from XML file, whichever object is created, I passed it here. This is XML way of dependency injection of secondary type. But while using stereotypes, these classes will not appear for you here. So then how we can perform dependency injection? That is also not possible. That's why they thought of doing automatic dependency injection. As container is creating objects automatically, they thought why can't we inject? Of course they should inject because you don't have control here. You can't inject them. Without injecting, they can't connect. So controller wants to connect with service, services wants to connect with DAOs. How they connect? I'm not creating any object here. I'm not creating. Then how they connect? They can't connect. So as you want to connect them, compulsory you should mention auto wired, then they can connect. Is it clear, guys? Any confusion? Stereotype annotation given for to create objects automatically. Okay. So the coming to the definition, stereotype annotation means it's a categorized annotation. They categorized classes into multiple types. As per MVC, we categorized classes like controllers, business classes, DAO classes, utility classes, configuration classes. So that categorized annotations they given to you. For controller, one controller annotation provided. For service annotation provided. For DAO, repository annotation provided. For configuration classes, configuration annotation provided. And for utility classes, component annotation provided. So when you put annotations on top of those specific classes, why I need to use controller annotation on top of controller only? When we do end-to-end example, you can realize that. So controllers you want to connect with front end, so compulsory you should mention at the rate controller. Then only this class will get capabilities. Let's say as we are here in India, we will get different kind of ID cards. Someone will get Aadhaar card, someone will get ration card, someone will get a different set of cards, free ration card. Some people will get a different kind of cards. What are all they are categorizing people with that specific cards so that applicable schemes will be given to them. Similarly, the stereotype annotations given to these classes, different stereotypes given. When you mention at the rate controller, then container, your container will think that okay, this is controller class which needs capabilities to connect with the front end. Usually controller will do the same thing. They will connect with your front end views. So it will give capabilities to this class to connect with front end. When we do end-to-end example, we will connect with front end also. So these methods can connect with front end. Now controllers immediately need to exchange data with whom? Business classes. So business classes needs transactions and all transaction capabilities mainly. So when I mention at the rate service, it will understand okay, your service class may need transaction capabilities. On transactions discussion, we see that at the rate transactional you can mention here. So it will control your database flows because from here we will call so many database methods. So it will control your database operations consistency. So then immediately it will consider okay, this class is a service class. I need to control the transactions, whichever transactions mentioned here. Let's control them. And when we mention DAO repository annotation, it will treat this class as a database class. Here you can perform all CRUD operations. So like that they categorized. When you mention configuration annotation, okay. So this is given for configuration. Let's execute all at the rate bean methods. These are our configuration methods. Lot of configuration at the rate beans we will write there. Let's say something data source objects we create, connection pool objects we create. It's not right class, but it's okay. So when you want to create connection pool objects, we will create them here. Connection pools, lot of stuff. Okay, I'll give you end-to-end example tomorrow so that you can see which one is performing which job. Clearly, I'll explain what is the job of each class. But on very high level, how to create objects, how to connect to them. From this context, what I want to realize you how these objects are creating and how they are connecting. Simple. In two lines, you can remember them. If it mentioned with the stereotype, this object is created. If it mentioned with the auto word, this object is injected. That's it. Here object is created when I mentioned stereotype. Here object is injected when I mentioned auto word. Okay? Yeah. I'll give you end to end flow. Okay? From front end to till the connection point. I wanted to give a connection pool example. Okay? The importance of connection pool. I want to explain you because I want to discuss configurations. Configuration annotation more in detail. Okay? In real time, we use that configuration annotation for connection pooling. Okay. Now listen, when we have data, when data coming from front end, we send that data to controllers. Controller will send data to business. Business will send to DAO. Imagine this is Swiggy application, okay? And you are doing order here, food you are ordering here. You are ordering food from here. So you are selecting some item here and you are placing order. As soon as you place order, as soon as you select the item and place the order, the request will go to, it is little blurry. Okay. So the order will go to order controller. Order controller will send it to order service. Order service will send it to order DO. Finally, your order should save it into DB. Okay. So my order controller will read data, which items you are ordering. Then it need to send it to order service. All the business related operations, calculating price, item price, discounts, order DO, which will connect with database and do CRUD operations. Is this image clear? It's looking a little blurry to me. Is it okay? Yeah. So, sure, sure. Yeah, sure. So here, yeah, this is what in the first discussion MVC we discussed what is MVC architecture and why we need them also, right? Okay. Anyway, I'll share the document. So generally, this is how we write for any use case, right? Any use case consider we will have controller service DO for any use case. Imagine real time for any front end form, we will write a controller service DMs. Now I have a order here, order form from Swiggy app. I'm selecting an item and placing order. In the backend, I will have a order controller to receive the data, which all items I selected. So if you select something biryani, that biryani will be selected here. Okay. Then it will send the same data here to order service. What it will do, it will get this biryani portion and it will do calculation how much he selected. Is it a family pack, a small one? What is the price of it? How many packs he selected? All that calculation stuff it will do here. Once it is done with the calculations, it may need to save data into database. So here you may have save method. Using save method, it will place all the details, complete details of your order. Complete details of your order, it may need to save it into database. In this real-time use case, from here, lot of end users will perform this job at a time. For each second, for each second or for each minute, thousands of orders will be placed. Thousands of customers, not only one, thousands of customers. So when I read the document, on an average, they are getting per minute more than 9,000 requests they are getting. On an average, in peak time, it may go up to 1 million requests also. 1 lakh to 1 million requests also they may get at peaks. So when they get that many users requests at a time to place the orders, backend how many controller or service DO objects will be created? Only one. We understand that these all are objects are singleton. So though millions of users requesting, here this side we will have one object only. But one object will serve any number of users requests. So one object in Java is fine. In Java side, one object is fine. Maintaining one object, singleton object is fine for 9,000 users or 1 million or 1 crore. Any number of users can call to place the order. But when it connecting with the database, one single connection object is not sufficient. At a time 9,000 users request I got. From here, let's say JDBC code write. If you write here JDBC code, something JDBC code if you write here, and JDBC will do what always, it will fetch a connection, it will execute statement and it will close connection. Get the connection from database, executes the queries, finally it will close connection. Every time for every user request, if you write JDBC code, it will get the connection, execute statement and it will close the connection. When I have huge traffic, writing simple JDBC code not is recommended, because databases will have hardly few number of connections. For commercial databases, let's say they might have 1,000 connections and they may have auto scaling option also. Still, writing JDBC code is not recommended. At a time I got 9,000 requests here, but I have only 1,000 connections here. So your JDBC for first 1,000, it will execute all database operations by getting 1,000 connections, and it will close, of course, that 1,000 connections. But meanwhile, the remaining 8,000 users also are waiting in the queue. They also placed order. So what it will do here, for first 1,000 users, it will place orders properly. For the remaining 8,000, it will throw errors saying that database connections are not available. So using JDBC will not handle many requests. JDBC will not handle many requests. It cannot. When you get many requests, it cannot handle it. So then what is the solution? Connection pool. Using connection pool, if you can write the same thing, any number of request it can handle. It can make users wait also. Submit 1 million request or 1 crore request here. If I use connection pool every time it will not get connection from database. At a time, all the connections reserve, it will reserve, it will reserve all the connections during application startup itself. It will get all the connections into connection pool. All 1000 connections or 500 connections, whichever you mentioned the count. From database, it will get all the connections during application startup itself. Connections it will get at a time. Every time for every user request, it will not go to database and give me connection, take the connection, close the connection. All that stuff it will not perform. Connection pool will get all the connections at a time. During start, during app start, during your application start itself, it will get all the connections. When it will return back that connections to database, during app shutdown only. When you shut down your app, it will close them. Until then, it will keep all that connections with your connection pool object only, inside your Java only. Whenever you want to execute statement now onwards, if you can get connection from here, and if you execute your SQL query, and once you're done with your job again, if you place it into connection pool, your operations are faster comparing with JDBC. Getting connection from connection pool and executing and returning back to connection pool is faster. You can see 1000 times faster than the simple JDBC. It will fetch connection, immediately it will execute statement and it will give the connection back to connection pool. Same connection will be utilized to many users. And one more greatness in the connection pool is it can hold them. Waiting time we can set. Let's say 2 minutes waiting time if I configure in my connection pool configuration, what it will do, when I get 1000, first 1000 users request, it will execute them. The remaining 8000 users, it can able to hold until next 2 minutes also. Because such a configuration we can do. So once you get the data here, it can hold your database operations. It will say, wait, I'm busy little, wait. So you have waiting time till next 2 minutes. Anyway, I will make sure that in next few seconds only I'll execute your data, but wait, it will hold them. Just in microseconds time, it will execute first 1000 users. Actually, for with my database with 20 connections when I tried, for each second it executed almost 1000 records for each microsecond, not maybe for each second. For each second, 1000 records executed. So in next 9 seconds, all these records are going to insert 9000 records. So obviously, when I place an order, I might count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 seconds. Between that, it will execute it. It will give you acknowledgement. Okay, your order is placed. You can enjoy your food. And if they have auto scaling option, database also will improve performance. That is not from our side, from database side. If database side, if they increase your connections count, auto scaling. So they may put scaling option, increase 1000 more. If that is the case, you may get 2000 connections into connection pool and you can use it. Generally, connection pools are fixed number of arguments we put. So though it scale up, scale down also, we don't really worry while using connection pool. But it will improve performance. If they scale it up, the performance will be obviously improved. But we don't care. From Java side, whatever number of maximum connections we need, we will fetch it and keep it into connection pool. Those are sufficient for us. They will improve performance thousands of times. And it will not throw any exceptions also. If connection not available, it will say, okay boss, wait. You have time till next 2 minutes. I'll execute your order. So such a connection pools we create from @bean method under configuration class. Using @bean method, we create such configurations. Okay. So tomorrow I'll give you this example. Okay. with the end-to-end use case. End-to-end use case, I'll give you this example, okay? So we'll see what is connection pool, how we can do CRUD operations, okay? We'll create front end, back end, database, everything, and we will see. So you'll get end-to-end clarity, okay? So shall we do this tomorrow?